Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Single Guy's Kitchen. Today, I am going to make an amazing Cuban dish. Bacalao con papas and salsa de tomate. Codfish with potatoes in tomato sauce. This is a very traditional Cuban dish that has its roots in Portuguese and Spanish cooking. So I'm gonna make this for you guys today, and I'm sure you're gonna enjoy it. Let's take a look. All right, so first thing, we're going to go over the ingredients. So obviously the first thing that we're gonna look at is the codfish. Now, I am using salted cod. As you can see the salt on it. Don't worry, the salt will not stay there. I will show you how to desalinate the codfish, right? So I'm gonna use two codfish fillets. These are salted. Again, you can use unsalted codfish or you can use fresh codfish. This is the more traditional way that we use codfish for this particular dish. So the next thing are the potatoes. Obviously, potatoes are gonna be cooked separately and they're gonna be added to the codfish once it is cooked. Is the last thing we add to it pretty much. So next we have the cooking wine. I've talked about cooking wines in previous videos. So here in Miami, we have cooking wines sold in the supermarket that are specifically for cooking. You don't drink those wines. I've talked about them before. There's a number of brands. So I don't know, if any of you use cooking wine, what brand do you prefer? If you want to know what brands I use, let me know in the comments and I'll be more than glad to tell you the ones I use. Next, I have about a tablespoon of complete seasoning. Again, this is a mixture of a lot of different spices that you can buy in the supermarkets, or you can use your own mixture, whatever you like to put in it. I just really like this because it has everything I need. I'm going to also add a little bit of paprika. So paprika is really good. It gives it a little bit of a smoky flavor. So I like that. Now, another thing I'm gonna use that you're not gonna see maybe other people making this dish use are pimientos morrones, red pimientos or red peppers that come in a can. You can actually get this at the supermarket. Comes in a can like this, and it's very soft, as you can see. Again, we use this in a lot of dishes that we make in Cuban cooking. So you'll see this used a lot. I just like to cut a few pieces into the sauce just to give it that peppery flavor, which is really great. Then I'm gonna use one tomato. I'm gonna chop it and I'm gonna cook it within the seasoning. Of course, garlic. I'm gonna use a couple of cloves of garlic and onions. I prefer red onions. I use red onions a lot. It's actually my favorite onions. You can use other onions if you don't like red onions. I happen to like this one more than anything else. And finally, I'm gonna use also tomato sauce. This is a lot. I'm gonna use about quarter cup of tomato sauce, not so much. Maybe a little more. It's up to you. You can put a little bit more if you want. Then I'm gonna chop a few green onions in it. I really like this. I actually grow these. I grow a lot of the herbs I use. I just really like to grow my own. I grow peppers, tomatoes, etc. So one day I'll give you a tour of my little garden where I grow these things. And then, I like to chop cilantro at the end. You'll see that cilantro is something that I love a lot, although it's not used in Cuban cooking a lot. I really, really like it. So I tend to chop a little bit of cilantro into this recipe. And again, cooking is about experimenting and trying new things. This is not set in stone. You can make changes to this. It's up to you how you make it. I just really like to experiment a little bit and try out new seasonings and new things in my cooking. And I guess, that's what makes it fun for me. So this is what I need to make the codfish. Now, I'm gonna go over the instructions on desalting or desalinating the codfish. so that you have an idea of how to do this. And this is really important because if not, it will come out really salty and inedible. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do with the codfish is to get rid of the salt. So the way we do that, the first thing we do is rinse it under water, under running water. So we're gonna rinse it really well, and we're gonna get as much salt as we can from it, and then we're gonna boil it. I have some water in a pot here boiling, and we're gonna give it a boil and then rinse it out with clean water again to just make sure that we get all of the salt from the cod and our dish doesn't come out too salty. So let's do that right now. Okay, so let's rinse it out really well. Make sure we get as much salt as possible from the fillets. You can use a vegetable brush if you want. I don't really feel that I need that. This tends to be more than enough. Just rinse it out really well. Rub it so that all of the salt comes off. Great. Okay. So that's all we need to do. Okay, so while the water boils, we're going to talk about another part of the meal that we're going to make today. These are called Malanga fritters or taro fritters. So taro is a root vegetable that's like potatoes. We eat it mashed or in soups and things like that. So I'm going to show you how to make Malanga fritters. So all we need is obviously the Malanga root or taro. We need an egg, and we need some cilantro and a little bit of salt. So check it out. Okay, so once we peel the taro or Malanga, so the next step in making the fritters is to use this very, very indispensable tool in Cuban cooking. So this is a grater, but it has more surfaces than just a regular grater. You can see it has fine grating and thicker slicer. And this is the part that we're going to use. Now, let me warn you. This causes many accidents that are very painful because the taro is so slippery that this may slip and you may scratch your fingers with this part, which is really, really painful. So a lot of people tend to now do it in a food processor or a blender. I don't. I prefer this method. It's a traditional method to make it. So we start by just running this up and down here, and you can see that it becomes a sort of paste, a little bit slimy, sticky. That's enough because I don't want to scrape my fingers. So we keep grating this until we have it all. So there you have it. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add 1 egg to it. Okay. And I'm going to mix this well. Okay, mix it well until the egg is well mixed with the taro. And then I'm going to chop a little bit of cilantro. All right, then we're going to put the cilantro in there. And we are going to mix. Okay, make sure the cilantro is fully integrated. And then last, we're going to add a pinch of salt to it. After you fry it, you can add more salt if you want, but I like to add a little bit of salt to it, and that's it. So we're going to deep fry this. This is fried in oil. You cannot use an air fryer to do this. Trust me, I tried. It was a mess. You cannot use an air fryer for this. So we're gonna fry it in oil. Okay, so now that the water is boiling, we're going to add the codfish in the water to boil the salt away, pretty much. So that's what we're gonna do. So we're gonna place it inside and boil it for just a few minutes, not a lot. Most of the cooking of the cod is salted, but most of the cooking will take place in the pan with the rest of the ingredients. Let's give it a few minutes to boil it, and I'm gonna get started with making the sauce for the cod. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna prepare is the rice. So I'm gonna make white rice because it is what traditionally we eat bacalao with, although you can eat it with whatever you want, it's up to you. But I'm gonna make rice today the traditional way we make rice in Cuba and other Latin countries. You know, with modern technology now everybody has a rice maker. I have two, but I'm gonna make rice the traditional way, and we're gonna use a cast aluminum pot or a caldero. And un caldero is a pot that is made with aluminum, and we use it traditionally for a lot of different things. But mostly we use it to make rice. And so I'm gonna show you how to make rice in this, because if you're Cuban or Dominican or Puerto Rican or Hispanic in period, you probably have used one of these, you know how to use it. Most people don't prefer it because you have to watch the rice. You can't just sit and watch TV while the rice is being made because it'll burn. So the rice maker is automatic. You just set it and forget it. So the first thing is how much rice we're gonna make. That depends on how many people are gonna eat. So make a little bit more. Now, the type of rice that you use is also important. I typically have 3 or 4 types of rice at home, depending on what I'm making. So this is, I'm using jasmine rice today because I just really like the aromatic rice. But other people just use regular, long grain rice. Some people use parboiled rice, which is pretty easy to make because, no matter how much water you add to it, it won't get sticky and gooey. The first thing I'm gonna do, I'm not gonna add the water yet. There's a little trick I learned while living in Dominican Republic. And this is to pre-cook the rice for a couple of minutes on the stove with a little bit of oil. And this will, make the rice nice and fluffy, and it won't let it stick. And it will also, it won't be dry either. So this is a great way to make rice. Again, I learned this while I was living in Dominican Republic, and this is why it's important to travel and to learn about how people in other countries cook, because although you still want to keep your own ways of making food, you learn these little tricks that make it better or make it easier. So I learned this in the DR, and I'm gonna do it this way. Okay, now you don't necessarily have to do this this way. You can just add the water, the salt, the oil, and just cook it. But again, I learned this little trick, and I really, really like it. So I'm gonna use about 2 tablespoons of oil here. Should be enough. And I'm gonna put the rice on the stove. So I'm gonna mix in the rice with the oil well, and I'm gonna let her cook. Now, some people at the same time they're doing this, they're boiling the water to add the water already hot to the rice. I don't necessarily do that. Again, everybody has their own way of making things. I just really like this. So you can see the rice gets all shiny with the oil. And we're just gonna cook it for a few minutes until it starts sticking to the pot, then that's enough. Okay, so you can see the rice is already sticking a little bit. So I'm gonna remove it from the burner and then just add the water now. Okay, so how much water you add to the rice is crucial to the texture that it's going to have, especially when you're making it in this pot. Typically they tell you when you buy rice makers and things like that, that it is, 2 parts water, 1 part rice. And again, that's relative. Okay. I'm not particularly using that method, but that's what's recommended typically when you look at the instructions in a rice maker or whatever you're using. So I'm just pouring water until it's about a ½ inch above the rice. Sort of, you can sort of measure that if you wanted to, but again, you can use the standard measurement, 2 parts of water to 1 part of rice. So I put 2 cups of rice here, so it'll be about 4 of water or 3.5, something like that. Again, the more water you put in the rice, the stickier it'll get, and you don't want it that sticky. So the water is already there. So now we are going to add the salt. So for this amount of rice, I'm gonna add one teaspoon. I'm gonna add two teaspoons, actually 1.5 teaspoons. The reason is that, the sauce in the codfish, it's has a lot of seasonings, and so seasonings come with salt. You don't want it over salted. So a teaspoon and a half is more than enough. And again, so that's it. So we're gonna let it come to a full boil, and then we're gonna lower the temperature and just watch the water level. Now sometimes we add too little water to it, and so we might have to sprinkle a little bit of water while making this rice. And so there it is, rice, the traditional way we make it, with a cast aluminum pot. Okay, so here's the cod. I rinsed it out really well after I boiled it, so most of the salt is gone. You can actually taste it, it's already cooked. Okay, so I'm gonna cut it in chunks, right? Now, some people just shred it into very tiny pieces, and you can do that. I'm just not gonna do that. I'm gonna cook it in these chunks. I think it looks prettier. Okay, I'm gonna slice this in half because it's pretty thick. Okay, so there we have it. So now we're gonna go make the sauce while the rice is being made. And so the sauce is one of the most important parts because it's what will give the cod the flavor, although cod is a very flavorful fish. Okay, so I'm gonna cut the tomato, cut it in slices first, and then I'll chop it. Now I can always use my food processor and or my choppers that I have. I'm just gonna do it manually. Okay, my garlic. Now you can use garlic paste, or you can buy the minced garlic in the supermarket, whatever. It's still garlic. Just have a little preference for the fresh stuff. So slice my onions. I'm not gonna chop the onions. I'm gonna slice it, separate it. And then my green onions. Then I'm gonna get a piece of the pepper. Slice it long like this. And then cut it in small chunks. Okay. And the final ingredient here will be my cilantro, of course. You don't have to chop it so finely for this recipe, so this is just perfect. So these are all the ingredients, and we're gonna cook all these together to make the sauce. Okay, so to make the sauce, I'm gonna use my cast iron pan. I really love cast iron because it cooks very evenly and it's naturally non-stick. So I'm gonna pour about a quarter cup of oil, and right away I'm going to add all the ingredients that we chopped except the cilantro. That I'll add at the end. Okay. And I'm gonna also leave some green onions. I'm not gonna put them all right now. Okay. So I'm going to cook this for a few minutes. So the onions cook and the tomato begins to break down. So let's let it cook for a couple of minutes. Okay, next I'm gonna add about a quarter cup of tomato sauce, and I'm going to add my cooking wine. Then I'm going to add my complete seasoning and my paprika. And I'm going to lower the temperature to medium. Okay. I'm gonna add a little packet of seasoning, and I'm gonna add this because this has saffron and it's gonna give it a very nice color. So if you want to know what seasoning this is, again, let me know in the comments and I'll tell you exactly the brands I use and all those things. Okay, so the next step is to add the fish. But before we do that, I'm going to add a little bit of water because we don't want the sauce to consume too quickly. Okay, so I'm gonna add the fish. Okay, and then I'm going to add a little bit of water. And so we're going to let it cook for about 15 minutes to 20 minutes until some of the water evaporates and the sauce thickens a little bit. You don't have to add anything to the sauce. You actually want it nice and saucy because we're eating it with white rice, so you want it nice and saucy. So we're gonna leave it there for about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how fast the water consumes. And so you gotta watch it. You don't want the water to consume too quickly because we want to turn the fish a little bit halfway through the cooking. So I already have the potatoes boiling. As soon as the potatoes are done, we're going to add the potatoes to the pan, and that will complete our fish. So I'm going to cover this with this universal lid, just to make sure that it cooks a little bit quicker. You know, in a few minutes we'll come back and we'll turn the fish, and then in a couple more minutes, you know, when the potatoes are done, we'll add the potatoes. Okay, so our fish is ready and the potatoes are also ready. So I'm gonna add the potatoes now to the fish, and I'm going to make sure the potatoes are covered by the sauce, right? So we can actually nice and smothered in this delicious sauce. So looks great, smells great, and I'm sure it's gonna taste great. So let's finish up the meal with the last item that we are going to make. So we can turn this off now, cover it, and just leave it there. Okay, so the last thing we're gonna make for this meal are the Malanga fritters. Remember the beginning, we made this this mixture here, this paste with the Malanga root or the Taro root. So now we're gonna actually make the fritters, which are very simple, in a frying pan. You can put about a cup of oil. I use canola oil just because it's one of the healthiest oils to cook with. If you're using a deep fryer, that's fine as well. I just prefer a pan for these things. So we're going to scoop it out with a fork, about that much, and just put it in the oil. Okay, so we'll let it cook before we flip it. Once it's hard in the bottom, we can flip them over. These cook pretty quick, you know, so you have to watch them because they can burn very easily. Okay, you can flip them over now, and you see that beautiful golden color. Okay, that's the egg, and so we'll just cook it for a couple more minutes. You want to make sure it's well cooked, because sometimes, you know, we take them out too quickly and they're cooked on the outside, but they're not well cooked in the inside. So make sure that, and you can do that by poking it with something like a knife, for example. So you can do this. See, you can see some of the paste right there. So that's not well cooked yet, so we'll give it a few more seconds before we take them out. And flip them over again. Okay, now they're ready to be taken out. So I like to put some paper towel on my plate, just to make sure that it soaks up some of the oil. And so that's it. They're nice and crunchy and very tasty. So we are ready to serve this meal. Okay, so we have our rice. So we're gonna serve a nice portion of rice. Okay. Nice and hot. And the most important part, which is our fish. Some nice generous portions of fish, right? And our potatoes to go with the fish. And I like to put some of the sauce on top of the rice. Right. A little bit of the sauce on the rice. And then I'm going to sprinkle some of the cilantro and the green onions. Right. And finally, our Malanga fritters. Right. And there you have it. There it is. Bacalao con papas, arroz blanco, y frituras de malanga. Codfish with potatoes, white rice, and malanga fritters. Bon appetit.